About 2 months ago, as I was scrolling past some articles, I came across a very shocking title. It was in fact so freaking shocking that I couldn't bring myself to believe in it. So I immediately clicked on the headline and started reading it. Part of me was still reluctant to believe the claim, but there was also a part of me that was screaming, "I told you so." So the more I read, the more it peeled away layers of doubt in my mind. It slowly started to click for me, and that was when I decided to share this article with you as well and give you my own personal view on why I think it's a truthful claim. And it will definitely shock some of you, because if I didn't know this, there's a big chance you didn't know it either. I will also be putting the link of the article in the description if you want to check it out yourself. So the article starts off by saying, sure, grit can help you get ahead, but a new study has found that if you lean on grit to white knuckle through adversity too often and don't learn other ways to cope and care for yourself, you might end up damaging your brain. I mean, I think that's totally fair. Look, if you're putting so much pressure on your brain without giving it any rest, it will start to crack. Exactly like when you overtrain and you start getting joint issues or muscle tears or whatever. It's the same thing, a physical organ which is being overworked. I mean, there's nothing to doubt there. But let's read on. Before I explain the research, it's important to stress that no one is saying grit is a bad thing to have. As one of the authors behind the recent study, Darlingtina Isiaka, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, pointed out in a recent place explaining her work on the conversation, saying studies have linked grit with success in goal attainment, improved psychological well-being, and increased life satisfaction. I mean, that's true because that's why all of us got attracted to this concept in the first place. That's why it has become such a fad to be disciplined and show grit and perseverance, no matter how backbreaking the situation is. So it goes on to say, we found that men with higher levels of grit reported greater cognitive difficulties such as trouble concentrating, forgetfulness, and feeling mentally fatigued despite their strong motivation to persevere. And just to add a personal anecdote here, I remember there was a time in my life where I had to juggle too many things. And after about 6 months of persevering through this pressure, I started getting attacked by intense bouts of fatigue to a point that I couldn't focus on my work without falling asleep halfway through because the task I was working on required a lot of thinking. And even though I could clearly see how unhealthy I was, I kept telling myself I need to be disciplined and get this done no matter how I feel. Forget your mood, stick to the plan. That was my motto. And I plastered this note on the wall in front of my desk which said something like, do it sad, do it tired, just do it. And just do it I did, which eventually led to a full-scale breakdown and took me several months to bounce back and get back to work. And this exact phenomenon was pointed out at one part of the article. Being constantly under stress can essentially overwork certain parts of the brain. This damage can build up to make it harder for the brain to learn new things, remember information, and stay sharp as a person gets older. Over time, this sustained strain may lead to high blood pressure, stroke, depression, all of which have been linked to cognitive decline. You see, we've been told to just do it. No matter how you feel, or how much you hate doing it, or how incredibly fatigued you are, it doesn't really matter. You gotta check off today's to-do list. And to some extent, I say maybe that sort of mindset is needed. But ignoring your energy or the fact that you're not feeling as connected with your work as you've once been is actually the easy thing to do. It's a lazy thing to do. Sometimes choosing to take a step back is actually the most uncomfortable option. And look, if you want to live like that, your life becomes so fragmented that you lose the sense of self. You forget what got you excited in the first place, what you genuinely enjoy doing even when there was no reward. We have made things feel even harder by emphasizing so strongly on being disciplined. Now, even brushing your teeth has become something to put on your list. Nothing comes naturally to us anymore. It's like before you do anything, you have to tense your shoulders and say, yes, do this. You must be disciplined. When in reality, it's not even that hard if you think of it normally. If you actually put yourself in your natural mindset, you would have done it with so much more ease that even the result would have been better. the truth is, we think suffering is a virtue. And God forbids if we ever get any task done with absolute joy, because then it would make us feel so guilty that we're not doing much or we're not suffering enough, which is super crazy if you think about it. This whole mental trick that you have to just do it, in reality only curbs your curiosity. Don't think too much, just do it. Well, maybe there's a better way than to just brute force your way through. Maybe you can find a way that wouldn't take as long or would take less energy, which obviously we don't want to think about because that sounds like we're too much of a wuss and trying to think up an excuse to justify our lack of discipline to do it immediately. Nowadays, going against your nature has become a badge of honor for most of us. It's how we build mental muscles for endurance, remember? I mean, sometimes we even get blinded by this entire mentality. We force ourselves to do the unbearable work even when we actually have a problem in our environment. Instead of thinking maybe you need to change your space, maybe you need to make tiny adjustments somewhere, or maybe your mental fatigue is because you're holding onto a residual emotion which is blocking your working mind, we ignore all of that and we simply resort to this primitive way of plowing through no matter what. When you sense something is the matter and your work is simply too pressurizing for you, then you gotta think very carefully and actually solve it. Not to just push it aside and say, screw your mood, just get the job done. That mentality will only double the amount of time and energy you put on the work because you're not getting rid of the root problem. You're just pushing it under the rug. I mean, if you actually sat down and solved it, it would have taken you less time. Instead of doing it no matter what, you must think, how can I make this easier and much more enjoyable so that getting this done not only doesn't burn me out, but actually gives me a sense of fulfillment and motivation to do even more next time. For example, when you're not feeling up to the task, maybe instead of forcing yourself to do it, you watch somebody doing the same thing and then you would have this miraculous natural pull to do that too. You should be building a mental environment that is compatible with what you're about to do, because when we don't feel like doing something, it's only because we're not really in the compatible mental environment for that specific task. See, by doing this, you're making it a natural thing to do. In other words, you do not need a lot of willpower. You don't have to be disciplined at all. It just comes to you without you even trying. And that's when your best work comes around. Or there's also something else that might be the cause, which is you feel very disconnected with the work because you've lost your sense of purpose or you have forgotten it. So you have to kind of remind yourself. And for that, you need to meditate. You need to actually take your time to think about what you're doing and not to just constantly do it without any reflection. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that this was helpful in some ways, and I will talk to you next time.